Hi guys, welcome to the Knitting Expat Podcast. This is episode 135 and I'm hoping that today won't be a super long one. My name is Mina, by the way. Thank you for joining me. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back, and if you are new, thank you for checking me out, I guess. I hope you like what you see. And this is a podcast about knitting, spinning, and basically anything else crafty related that I might be getting up to. I do also sew, but my mum is borrowing my sewing machine at the moment, so, and I haven't done a whole bunch of sewing recently anyway, so, but I'm hoping to get more into sewing as the year progresses, once I get my machine back from my mum. But anyway, popped in really quickly to do a podcast today, and for once everything I want to talk about fits in this box, kind of. But the last few podcasts I've had way too many things to even try and pile onto this one box, and that was my aim, was to, like, this box was supposed to be my podcasting box, and as like time goes on, things I wanted to talk about, I would just like pop into this box, and then I'd sit down to podcast and it would all be in one place. But in the last few weeks things have been quite plentiful, shall we say, and I've never been able to fit everything into one box. Anyway, so places you can find me online: you can find me on Ravelry as Mina Phillip, on Instagram as the Knitting Expat, sorry, just Knitting Expat, all one word. You can also find the group on Ravelry for this podcast as the Knitting Expat Podcast on the groups tab, and show notes for this is going to be below this video on YouTube in the description box, so if you just click down there. I do put in as much detail as I can about the projects I'm working on and things I've finished, and since most of my projects I'm working on are design projects, actually pretty much exclusively at the moment anything I'm working on is a design, because I have a lot happening this year, so I can't really link to patterns because they haven't been released yet. But if I do talk about something that is a pattern that's been released, I will try and remember to link to it. Otherwise you can just search the pattern name on Ravelry and find it that way as well. I do like detail out needle sizes, yarns, colorways, etc. as well. I don't do project pages, it's just not something that's really ever gelled with me. I've always found it more cumbersome than useful for just the way that I do things. I know a lot of people really like them and they really benefit from them, and I can appreciate that a lot, I do, but it just doesn't work for me in my workflow and the way I do things. So I'm sorry I don't do project pages, but like I said, I do leave as detailed as possible notes below the videos, and I do talk a lot of detail on the podcast about, like, if I'm making any modifications or what I've done this way, that way, and like I said, because they're usually my own designs, my patterns are written up how I've knit the garment or whatever the project is, so that's kind of where my notes are, as it were. Sorry for any camera shaking, Hugo keeps bumping the table. But yeah, so I think that's everywhere you can find me online. I do sell knitting patterns, that's probably something else I should have mentioned. I'm Knitting Expat Designs on Ravelry, so that's the shop name there, but there should be a link to that below as well. I think Hugo's going to pop up and say hi. Oh, hello buddy. And they're molting at the moment because the seasons are changing, so it's got clumps of fluff coming off of him. You gonna say hi to the camera? Yeah, you gonna say hello over here? Nope. Reminds me of the early days where he would pop up every time I sat down the podcast and just like essentially steal the show, and yeah, just get himself in front of the camera any way he could. Anyway, so what I'm wearing, and I always forget to talk about this, so I wanted to make a point of talking about it now, and perfect timing because Hugo's blocking it, so you can't even see what I'm wearing. Hey buddy, are you just making things difficult for me? Okay, the sweater I'm wearing is the big red pullover, which has this cable detail running down the raglans, and if Hugo would get out of the way for just 2 seconds, I could show you. It also runs down the sides, and then it mirrors the raglan shaping at the top in terms of the cables. At the top they move diagonally out, and at the bottom they move diagonally back in. So I will link the pattern page below, you can go check it out. There's also a child size version. There's also a child size version as well, which Layla wears. Actually, I was going to talk about this later, but I did post a vlog should be the video before this, of just a day at the park that Layla and I had last week on Friday. And we're actually both wearing our sweaters, our matching sweaters. So, and both were knit out of Mon Sheep shop on her sock base. Oh geez, fluff in. Seriously, Hugo, I'm gonna have to put you down if you don't stop. Can you sit? Can you just sit down? Can you just sit? Okay. Oh, fuzz everywhere. Seriously. Okay. And the shawl that I'm wearing is actually my first ever hand-spun shawl. I did plan on this being a design, but these transition segments were just working out to be a little bit too difficult to write up in a way that was going to be just, you could pop them in anywhere. Every time I did them, I had to refigure out the instructions to make it work, and so that just wasn't going to be feasible. I would have to write 9 different variations on how to do this section, depending on, you know, your stitch count. It was too much. It was just too much ridiculousness to be able to do that. So I need to rethink these transition sections and do them slightly differently, and then knit up another version. So this one isn't going to be written up, but I do have fibre to spin up for another version, which will be hopefully coming sometime soon. Oh, I realised at the beginning I never actually mentioned where I'm filming from. I'm filming from my home just outside of London, just south. We're kind of between London and the south coast of England. Oh geez. And I'm called the Knitting Expat because I'm originally from the UK, but we were living abroad when I started the podcast, so I was an expat at the time. It doesn't really make so much sense now, but people know me as the Knitting Expat now, so it's I feel like changing the name will just be more confusing, so I'm going to stick with it, and who knows, we might move abroad again at some point in the far distant future. It's not on the cards anytime soon. In terms of announcements and new designs and stuff, I just released today's April the 2nd. Again, I'm being distracted by this cat, so I'm forgetting to talk about things. Today's April the 2nd, so on April the 1st, I released the last of the club designs for the Season Sock Club. Hugo, I know everybody loves you and everything, but I'm gonna have to put you down on the floor if you don't stop misbehaving. Yeah? Oh, thank you for the kisses. So here we go. So these are the Autumn Bark socks, knit out of the Woolen Homestead on their sock base in the Dragon's Egg colourway. Really beautiful. Absolutely love this shade of green, and with the speckles, it's just perfect. And I love how it worked with this stitch pattern as well. It's one that looks really complicated, but actually it's not that difficult to knit once you get going, and it's quite intuitive. Once you've done a couple of repeats, it's fairly, like, you can read your knitting and see where you are. It does create quite a squishy, but because it involves like increasing your stitch count and then decreasing it back out again, it does give a slightly larger sock than you would with your regular stitch count. So I suggest either, and I have this in the pattern, either going down a sock size or going down in your needle size to compensate for that, unless you don't mind slightly looser fitting socks. They're not going to be loose and like falling down your leg loose, but I typically like my socks with a lot of negative ease. So these ones have what would, for me, would be considered like a normal amount of ease, like negative ease for a pair of socks. I like mine with a lot more negative ease than is typical. So just bear that in mind when you're choosing what size and what needles to use. It is in the pattern, but like I said, I wanted to make that clear in case someone missed that. And yeah, so this is the last pattern in the club series. So I thought I'd show you all 4 designs together really quickly before we move on. If I can get these. This cat is driving me nuts. Can you see that? Oh, missing the purple there. There we go. These are the 4 all together. I'll show you them up close really quickly. I'm just going to move Hugo because this is getting to be too much. This was the Winter Gansey. This was out of Knitting It Up yarns. Then we have the Spring Showers, and this has a cable running down the front, and this is out of Leading Men Fibre Arts. Then we had the Summer Breeze, which has this Handspun like slip stitch motif, being a bit blown out by the lighting at the moment, but you can see it really clearly in person. It's just the lighting is really blowing out the colour and making it difficult to see the details. Okay, you can sort of see it better there. And this is out of Asylum Fibres, and like I said, finally we have the autumn bark socks out of Woollen Homestead. Absolutely love these. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to wearing these. They're super squishy. Got a super squishy heel. It's got a slightly different ribbing to the cuff, which flows really nicely into the design, which works really well. I like that. And the other thing different about these are the toes. I actually have a short row garter stitch toe, which is essentially the heel, but on the toe. So that's a bit different and something I haven't really included in my designs before now, so I thought that would be a fun little addition, something a little bit different. I have tried to include something a little bit different with each of the designs as I go along. So this one has the different toe and a slightly different ribbed cuff, but it's not that different. The Summer Breeze socks has a lacy rib on the cuff, which is a bit different. The spring showers socks have a twisted rib cuff, which might be different for some people, but also the cabling with the ribbing down the back is a different detail than I've done before. I think these ones I'd actually planned on doing the short row toe, but when it came to doing the toe, I can't remember where I was or what I was doing, but it completely slipped my mind and I just did my regular toe without thinking about it. And these socks, the Winter Ganzis, have the garter rib. If it will focus, there we go. That garter rib at the top. It's not quite a garter rib, but it's like a garter seed stitch type of rib, but I really like it. I really like that effect, how it worked with the rest of the sock. I'd already said that I wasn't going to be doing different heels for my sock designs because I really like this heel. It is my go-to heel. It's my German short row heel in garter stitch, or sometimes in stockinette as well. I don't think I didn't do any of these ones in stockinette. And my little mini heel flap adjustment. I pretty much do this for every pair of socks I knit ever since I came up with the technique for myself. And I don't plan on not doing it going forward. So it is something I will keep doing. And yeah, so that's not something I'm going to change in my patterns, because it's also a technique that I'm not saying I'm the one who invented it, but the way I do it, I came up with on my own. So I feel comfortable including that technique in my designs without worrying about infringing on someone else's copyright either. So that's another reason. I'm hoping this week's podcast is not going to be super long. So I only have 3 finished objects to show you. They are all socks, and they were all knit on 2.25mm needles, US ones. Either Chiaogus or high sharps. Those are my needles of choice for socks. I'm leaning more towards my Chiaogus recently, just because the high sharps, the cables are frustrating to say the least. I've never minded that in the past, but now I'm finding it a little bit more tedious. Maybe just because the cables are older now and they're getting a little bit more kinky. I probably just need to dip them in some hot water and fix that. But also my needles, the high sharp needles, are all a little bit bent now. Mine's the sock ones anyway. I notice when I knit with them, I can feel that they're bent compared to the Chiaogus. But again, they are much older needles. I've had them for much longer than I've had the Chiaogus. So that's probably something to do with it. There's actually nothing wrong with them. They knit perfectly fine. Just want to put that out there. Just personal preferences change over time as well. So there's that to bear in mind. The first pair of socks I have to show you are, this is actually all my Edinburgh knitting in terms of the finished objects. So the first pair of socks has been really blown out. Let's see if I can get this to adjust. There we go, that's a bit better. This is yarn by Mythica Fibres in her sock base, which I believe was a 75/25 superwash merino nylon, and this is the Nimue colourway. And yeah, and I finished these just before leaving for Edinburgh. So I stayed the night at my parents' the night before going up to Edinburgh, because it was just logistically it worked out easier that way. And it was also a rainy New Year the night before going up to Edinburgh on the 20th of March, so I got to spend that with my parents, which was really nice. And yeah, so I actually ended up I finished knitting these that night before I even left for Edinburgh, so I ended up taking this finished pair of socks with me. But these are going to be gift socks, and yeah, really like how these have turned out. Really lovely colour. Love the speckling on it as well. It's really beautifully speckled. And again, I popped in my usual garter heel. And actually on this one I didn't do a mini heel flap, mainly because the friend I've knit this for, I know she doesn't have particularly high arches and she doesn't need the extra space from that, so just a regular sock there without the mini heel flap. The next pair of socks is a new design which should hopefully be coming out soon. The pattern has been written up. I need to get it tech edited. I just need to like take a few more photos of it and pop those in the pattern, and then that'll be ready to go. These are for me. I knit these for me, and if you recognize the colors, it's because they are I used the leftovers from my Not So Little Nugget pullover, which was a finished object last time I spoke with you. So yeah, so I knit these for myself, and these are going to be called the Twist and Slip because it uses a mixture of twisted stitches and slip stitches. So these transition segments use slip stitch. It's like a mosaic knitting technique. Use slip stitches to transition through, and these plain sections are actually, I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see, is knit in twisted stockinette. So just gives it something a little bit different, a little bit of fun, and you can probably see the difference better in this section because it's just plain knitting on the sole, but you've got the twisted stockinette on the top, so you can see the kind of added texture it gives to the socks. Obviously this is optional. If you didn't want to do it in twisted stockinette, you don't have to. You can just obviously do it in plain stockinette. I just wanted to do something a little bit different, and yeah, so I really like how that has turned out. And I'll run through the colours really quickly. So this one I'll do this way around. The red is Neighbourhood Fibre Co in Old Town. The orange is Hedgehog Fibres in Rusty Nail. The yellow is also Hedgehog Fibres in Pollen. The green is Neighbourhood Fibre Co in Logans Circle. The blue is Hazel Knits in Corduroy. No, Coveralls. Not corduroy, Coveralls, sorry, it's like denim colour. And the purple is also Hazel Knits in the Spooky Hue colourway, hue as in H-U-E. So yeah, so these, and I knit these quite long, as you can tell, like they are very long socks, but I did that intentionally because I really wanted to use up as much of the colours as I could. I think in total this, I can't remember now, but this sock used like 120 grams of yarn. Like it used a lot of yarn because I made it so big, and also the skeins that I had were all like the 400 yard type skeins, where so they were like the small, they're quite the heavier fingering weight range. So yeah, I'm really happy with how these have turned out. And like I said, I just have a few more photos I need to take, a few more like detailed shots I need to take of these to pop into the pattern. Grace very kindly, Grace of the Babbles Travelling Yarns podcast, was my roommate for Edinburgh, and she very kindly offered to model these for me, so I have some photos of her wearing these near where we were staying. We went to take some photos one day. The thing is, the reason why I haven't really shown my sock patterns, don't really have modelled photos of socks, is because, and I talked about this earlier, is I do like my socks with a lot of negative ease, a lot more than what is typical. So the problem that causes is on the foot, at the end of the foot, it's fine. But on the rest of the foot and the leg of the sock, usually if there's a pattern, it looks a bit distorted on my feet, on my legs, because I like it with a lot of negative ease, so it gets really pulled out and the pattern can look quite distorted. So for me, if I'm going to be modelling my own sock designs, you're not really going to see the design that well on me. So unless I have someone else with slightly smaller feet or skinnier legs to model them, I tend to not show the socks worn for that reason, because you wouldn't get to see the design all that well. What I really need to get is like one of those like little leg foot mannequins to like just like put socks on and take photos that way. That might work. But anyway, so I know I've had people asking about that, and I am going to be trying to get more modelled photos of my sock designs before releasing them if I can. It's just not always practical or possible to do that. So Grace actually worked out with Grace really well, because she has a similar shoe size to me. She's a slightly smaller shoe size than me, but not that much so that it looks really bad, and she's a similar height to me as well. Actually, we are the same height. I think she might even be a smidge taller. We're both quite tall, and here comes Hugo again. and so it actually worked out really well. She also managed to get some modelled photos of the not so little nugget pullover on her as well. She's slightly smaller than me, like in terms of measurement wise, but it still looked really good on her. And yeah, it was nice to be able to take photos of someone else wearing my designs rather than having to try and direct Perry to take photos of me, which he does a good job, to be fair. Like, he tries his best, but I'm always way more self-critical than I should be, to be quite honest. But anyway, all that aside, the last pair of socks is a new design, and I am going to try and take modelled photos of these on my feet if I can. I don't think this one looked as distorted when I tried it on earlier, so this one might work out okay, we'll see. This is a new design out of Dragon Hoard yarn in the Come Alive colourway. It's also on her sock base. This is actually the next version, or the latest version of that cabled sock that I showed you, and I don't know if you remember, I said I was going to go back and knit another sample of these because I wanted to add some different details to it, and so this is that pair. So I'm going to show you what this looks like down the front. So this one is with the more traditional, I'm calling this one the like the spine cable, like a spine, because it looks like a little spine down the front. So this one is a slightly more 3D cable, although once it's blocked it's not really that 3D. And then it's got these little twisted stitches down the sides, and then it's basically all ribbed throughout the rest of the sock. And it's just every few rows at the end of every repeat there's like a garter round. Might be able to see it better on this side. This lighting is really blocking. In person you can absolutely see it really clearly how it works out, but this lighting is really blowing it out and making it difficult to see the details. So there's like a garter round at the end of each repeat, which makes it a really fun, really easy to knit pattern on the go, because you don't have to like mark where you are. You can easily count your repeats and see where you're at, and yeah, I really love it for that. So it looks like at the foot. So you can see the garter bits along here. Makes it really easy to count your repeats. And then the other sock has what I'm calling the fishtail cable down it. So I decided, rather than choosing just one to go, which one to go with, and this one's a slightly flatter cable, I thought I would do the pattern with both options included. And yeah, to be quite honest, by adding all this extra detail at the sides with the twisted stitches and all the ribbing and things, I somehow managed to make this way more complicated for myself to write up the pattern. I've ended up having to chart and write out the instructions for each size separately, and there are 7 sizes in this pattern. I've done it, it's all done. I did it separately just so that it's really clear and really easy for people to follow, and it's not like trying to mess around with reading certain parts of things and stuff. It's just, I always try to make my patterns as clear as I can. So that's done. I still need some, and like I said, I'm going to take some pattern photos after I finished here and hopefully get that off to my tech editor as well, and so hopefully those 2 pairs of socks will be available soon. Yeah, the only thing I will say with those cabled socks is I would suggest reading through the pattern first and only print off the pages you need for your size, because like I said, each size is written out separately and each size is on one page. Like in terms of the pattern instruction, the actual sock instructions are like together. So so yeah, I highly suggest you do that so you're not wasting paper, because otherwise you're printing out 6 pages that you don't need. Then that's it. That's it for finished objects. That's all I have to share there. And I have 4 works in progress at the moment. One has had no progress on it, which is Layla's Pinwheel Scrap Blanket, which I'm working on at the moment. I think I've done 3 or 4 squares for that now, and I haven't made any progress since the last time I showed it to you, so I'm not going to show you that now. And another one is a super secret design project, which I can't share right now either. So those are not here to be shown, but which means I only have 2 things to show you today. So it should be nice and quick. Yeah, it's weird, it's like a 3-2-1 episode today, because I had 3 finished objects, 2 works in progress, and 1 spinning project to share with you. So it's a bit of a 3-2-1. Maybe that'll be the podcast title, we'll see. So the first thing I wanted to show you is the sweater that I'm working on. This is a new design, and this is the, let me see which way around to do it this way. Currently I'm thinking of calling it the Yorkville pullover, because it's using the same stitch pattern as I have in the Yorkville hat and the Yorkville socks that I have previously published. And so last year I released the New York hat collection, and I'd used Green Mountain Spinnery yarns in either their weekend wool or their music bases. So the music is a DK and the weekend wool is a worsted weight. And one of them, I knit the Yorkville hat out of this yarn, which is the music DK in this colour as well, the brick house colour, and I absolutely love how that turned out. And from that moment when I was knitting it, so about this time last year I was knitting those hats, I knew I wanted to design a pullover using this yarn in this colourway. So at Vogue this year, when I saw Maureen again, I let her know what I had in mind, and she absolutely loved the idea, so she gave me the yarn for that then, and I've been working away on it. And actually what I did was, I did finish this ball of yarn. I'd had about another 1.5 to 2 inches knit on this sweater, and then I got to the end of that ball and popped an extra cable needle through to sort of like split the stitches and tried it on, and I was like, okay, this jumper is now hitting me around 1 or 2 inches below where my natural waist would be, and I kind of liked that length at the front. And I was actually, you know what, I wear a lot of dresses, and so far a lot of my sweater designs have been quite long, sort of like bordering on like tunic length, because I've always been really obsessed with not finding clothes that are long enough for me. So I seem to have like gone that way with my designs, which is fine, absolutely fine, and I do wear them a lot. But I was thinking maybe for like dresses and stuff, sometimes it would be nicer to have something a little bit shorter, so you know, so that it shows off my waist a little bit more. And this is a slightly more boxy-ish style, like there's no shaping in the body and stuff like that, so it's still fairly boxy, but I thought having the crop style might work. I don't know, I was contemplating playing around with a different silhouette than I have been previously, and I posted a photo on my Insta stories to ask you guys what you thought, whether I should rip back and do a more cropped style, so like the 1 or 2 inches below my natural waist being where the sweater ends, or should I just keep going and make it a more regular length pullover. And about 60-something% of you said, yeah, go for it, do a more crop style. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to try it, and if I don't like it, I can rip it out and make it longer. So there's that too. So what I did was I ripped it back. You can see I've got the ball hanging there. I ripped it back, and now I need to go down needle size and work the ribbing. And what I'm planning on doing is doing short rows, so the ribbing is going to be longer in the back than at the front, to kind of give it a little bit more interest in that way as well. I was thinking about doing a split hem, but I actually think I prefer the idea of doing short rows, so it's a more curved edge, which I think I'm going to like. And then I have to go back and do the sleeves and the neckline. I might actually do the neckline first, just so I can see how that's going to look. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this. This is plodding along quite nicely. And yeah, it's been a relatively quick knit when I've been able to actually work on it. I did take this with me to Edinburgh, but never actually worked on it. I was just working on socks the whole time. It just worked out to be simpler that way. That's that. And this is a project bag, one of my project bags. But from back in the day when I used to make project bags. I haven't made any, I basically haven't sewn anything since we left Bahrain, just because we had a baby, and that took up a lot more time than I not realised, because I expected it would, but it just meant I didn't have a lot of enthusiasm to pull out my sewing machine at that particular time. I'm starting to get that enthusiasm back now, which is nice. And the other project I have to share with you is another pair of socks. Surprise, surprise. This is a pair of socks. I actually cast these on Mother's Day, so just 2 days ago. And I mainly just about got the cuffs done on Mother's Day, and maybe a little bit of the leg. Was that on Mother's Day? No, actually no, I knit most of the legs on Mother's Day. I got to like about here on the legs in the evening. So during the day, in the morning actually, I got one cuff done before Perry had to go, and I'll talk more about Mother's Day later. And then I got the other cuff done later in the afternoon, and then the legs I got done in the evening once Layla had gone to bed. And then last night I just did this little bit as well. And so now I'm about 10 rows or so away from popping in the heels. I'm making these nice and long. I'm using, you may recognize the yarn, but I'm using Pattern Scrawl yarn in their sock blend. Let me find the tag here. So it's 75% washable wool, 25% nylon, and it is in the grey brown marl is the main sort of the stripy colour, and the grey at the end is like this, it's just charcoal, I think it's what it's called, is charcoal colour. So I'm using for like contrasting cuffs, heels and toes. These socks are going to be for my dad, and he likes to have really long legs, so I'm doing long legs. I am using 2.5mm needles, US 1.5s, because Patterns Croy I find to be quite a lot thicker of a sock yarn. And so it comes out like super stiff and dense when it's knit on US 1s for me. So I went up a needle size, and so this is actually a 60 stitch sock for my dad. He has quite skinny legs. My dad has very skinny legs, but he has a big ankle and his feet are quite wide. So what I'm doing is 60 stitches for the leg, and then I'm going to be doing the mini heel flap adjustment for him for the heels. But then I'm just not going to decrease out all the stitches. I'm just going to leave some extra stitches on the sole side to accommodate the wider foot. So that's what I'm going to do with him. I'm going to see how that goes. I've not done that before with his socks to see how that will fit, so it will be interesting to see how these turn out, and hopefully he likes them. I know he likes these colours, so hopefully he will like these socks. And they're really good, and I bought Patterns Croy specifically to knit socks for my dad, because he has blown through a few pairs of his merino based sock yarn socks in this last year. So I've vowed not to knit him any more merino based socks. So we will see how these hold up, hopefully better. And next up we have, so that's it for the works in progress section, and moving on to spinning. I really only have one thing to share with you for spinning this week, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Mainly, the first reason being that it was a giant project. I will quickly open it up and show you. So this is actually a 206 gram skein, so it was a little bit less than 8 ounces, 7.5-ish, I guess. I don't really know the conversions. But the natural coloured ply, it's a 2-ply yarn. So the natural coloured ply is a Polworth top from John Arbon Textiles. It was part of my Nil membership package that I got. And what's going on here? Okay, anyway, I'll sort that out later. Part of the Mill membership sort of package that I got, and I spun half of it for this, and then the other half is a 100 gram bag of bat bits, or urchins as she calls them, by Spin Jones. And she had this in a shop update recently, maybe like 2 or 3 updates ago. It was a set of bat bits or urchins called in the crocus color set, and there were actually like 23 or 24 like pieces of bats in there, so that was really quite interesting. And I spun them as a gradient, like in the color order that she had them in there. So it starts out with this like really dark purple, and it gradually moves through to this lighter purple, and then you can't really see into like lighter purples, and then into like oranges and yellows, and into this lovely like grassy green sort of color. And so it ends at like a, where did it end? Like this sort of green is where the end of the color scheme was. If you go back a couple of episodes, you'll see the fiber in the acquisition segment. And then I just plied them together. It's not super consistent. There are definitely super fluffy sections, like right here, that's a really thick bit. But overall it's fairly consistent. I would say this probably came out like anywhere from, there's definitely some fingering spots, and there's definitely some more sport weight to, and there's definitely some much thicker spots, but the thicker spots are fewer and far between. It's not like the predominant thickness of the skein. I'd say this is probably more of a sport weight overall. Yardage wise, like I said, it's 206 grams. I got 647 yards, or 592 meters. So I think, yeah, it came out more of like a lovely sport weight. I'm looking forward to getting this popped onto the needles pretty soon. I just need to get it wound up, and I will definitely share a photo of like the cake once it's all been wound up on Instagram, so make sure you check that out once I post it. And yeah, I mainly spun the singles using a short forward draw, and then just plied it together. The second reason I don't have any other spinning to show you is I kind of broke my spinning wheel. Thankfully it can be easily fixed. It's not a huge issue, but basically what happened was, as I got towards the end of the plying on this, I noticed one of the footmen on my wheel, which if you're not familiar with spinning wheels, you have the pedals where you like treadle, and then there's like two like wooden things that come up and attach to the main bit of the wheel that when you pedal, those move the wheel around. Sorry, that was super technical. Anyway, one of those fell off, essentially. Or no, one of them got loose, and so it kept slipping out of place, making it really difficult to spin. And then suddenly, just as I was getting to the end of plying, like it popped off, like it completely came off, and it wouldn't stay on when you put it back on. It wouldn't stay on the wheel. So I ended up actually spinning or plying the last chunk of this fibre with one foot, because I couldn't pedal with the other foot because the footman wasn't attached, so I had to like just pedal it all with my left foot and hopefully get it all finished. And I did, thankfully I was able to get it finished, but it was really slow because of that problem. And so I basically immediately I took some photos and a small little video clip, and I sent it to Kromsky, to the help desk email address that I had, and I was like, what's wrong with my wheel? What have I done to it? Like, can I fix this? And they were very quick to get back to me, thankfully. They were very quick, and they said, yeah, what it looks like is there's like a little screw and nut that like keeps the footman attached to the wheel, and it seemed like that had come off. And I found the screw, but I couldn't find the nut. So I'm not sure where that went off to. It probably got hoovered up somewhere. Anyway, it's so tiny, like it's smaller than like, the nut is smaller than the head of this pen cap. It's so small, I couldn't find it. And so I found the screw, and they said they were going to send me a replacement for the nut. So hopefully that will come soon and I will be able to get my spinning wheel back up and running, because yeah, I kind of miss it, to be honest. Sad. So I finished this last week and I haven't been able to spin since. I had actually originally started spinning this before Edinburgh. I'd gotten the coloured singles were basically done before I went to Edinburgh, and about a third of the white ply was done before Edinburgh as well. So I just had to finish off the white ply and then ply it together, which I did once I got back. Next up we have acquisitions, and I don't have a whole lot to share with you, thankfully. I'm not going to go through everything I got at Edinburgh because I did a separate video for that, so you can go back and check that out if you'd like. And I had little Layla helping me with my Edinburgh Yarn Festival haul, so if you enjoy seeing her take on things, by all means make sure you check that out. She has opinions apparently, and she has lots of them, so you can go check that out for those. I did actually place an order for an art bat from Fine Fish Yarns, the lovely Terry. She has started doing like offering fibre in her shop, and she had an update a week or so before Edinburgh, and I took the opportunity to hop on and purchase a bat from her. So the bat that I got is this beautiful number, and I haven't actually taken it out of the bag because I didn't want to ruin it, but it's a super sparkly, really colourful, very much my colours with like reds and blues and purples and yellows, and yeah, it just looked really fun, and it actually smells quite nice as well. I'm not sure what she uses in her house. Like, it's just, that red is everything. Look how beautiful that red is. And Terry is based out of Ireland, so yeah, and lots of sparkle in that one. So along with my order, she sent some sample Rolex as well, which was very kind of her. And so these will be fun to spin and play around with as well. So there's a pink one, and then this sort of like galaxy themed one. Wow, absolutely love this one. I don't remember seeing this in her shop. If she'd had a set of these Rolex, I probably would have purchased them. But I think at the time when I went on to purchase, she was saying that stuff was coming onto her shop as and when she got was able to like upload it. So it wasn't like a set time everything was in her shop sort of thing. So I purchased a bat, and maybe I just didn't see the Rolex at the time, but that blue purple Rolex is stunning. Alright, so the last thing that I got, which I wanted to show you, which is actually a gift. So on Mother's Day, a little bit of story time, I didn't actually realise Mother's Day was on the 31st of March this year. I don't know why, I just hadn't really looked into it beforehand. So a few months ago, one of my knitting friends from Dubai, she was coming over. Actually, a bunch of people from my knit group in Dubai were coming over for Edinburgh Yarn Festival this year. But this one particular friend, she was going to be spending some time in London after the festival as well. So we arranged to have a day where they could come down, where she could come down here with her family, and we could hang out with Layla. And specifically because she also wanted to see Layla, so we're trying to work it out on a day when Layla would be around, and we could just hang out for a day. So in the end, we just settled on the 31st of March because it was the only day available that she could do, that I was also free. That was a weekend, or a day later was in nursery and stuff like that. And it just didn't occur to me that the 31st of March was going to be Mother's Day. It was only after the fact that we realised that. And then Perry had his uncle's birthday on that day, birthday party on that day as well. And I was like, well, and again, all before we knew it was Mother's Day. And we were like, fine. And I was like, fine, you should go to that, and then I'll stay here with Layla, and my friend will come over with her family, and we'll hang out, and it'll be fine. So it rolls around to Mother's Day. Perry went off with his mum to visit his family and like help out there, which was actually, in hindsight, was really good that he went on his own, and that Layla and I didn't go as well, because he was able to really help out his mum, sort out some things for his granny. So it was actually very good that Layla and I didn't go, because Layla would have been a huge distraction for him, because, you know, when he's around, she only wants him. Anyway, so I stayed here with Layla. My friend came around with her family, and we hung out. We went out around town, and then Layla was getting really grumpy, and she'd kind of hurt her knee a little bit, and she wasn't really happy anymore. Like, she was having a difficult day. And so I brought her home for lunch, and like to just calm her down, essentially. So they went out for lunch on their own and came back to the house afterwards. So we hung out here for a while, and she gave me a little gift, which was really, really sweet. This is my friend Josie, who I've spoken about before. She also dyes yarn as Dubai Knits. It's her yarn line. I think she's like the only indie dyer in the Middle East, or at least in the UAE anyway. And she had a bunch of these pins made by Crinkles, based out of the US, and they're like wooden carved name badges, and she got one made for me, and so it says Mina. If you can't read it underneath, it says once in a mirror, always in a mirror, and Amira was like the name of our group. So we were the UAE Amiras was the name of our knit group. So yeah, that was really sweet and really lovely, and it's got like this really strong magnet on the back of it, which is probably what you heard me snapping earlier. So it will literally works through your clothing and stuff. So you can pop it on my shawl or whatever, and it's not really gonna, it's not going anywhere. So, which is quite nice actually, to have a really strong magnet like that, not have to worry about it falling off, and not having to use pins to damage knitwear and things like that. Anyway, so those were my acquisitions. One was a gift and one was a pre-Edinburgh purchase. And yeah, so that got me really kind of a bit emotional. I miss my knit group. They were lovely people. And I mean, they are lovely people. But it's, you know, life happens. And anyway, so moving on, we are now moving on to the knit along segment. We only currently have one knit along going at the moment, which is for the Seasons Sock Club. That is coming to an end. Can't remember when I said the knit along was going to end. I think it was like end of May, possibly. So once that knit along ends, I'll be doing prize drawings and announcing winners for that. So you still have some time to enter into that. Obviously the last pattern's only just been released, so you have plenty of time still. And so every finished pair of socks from that club will give you an entry. If you've knit the same pattern twice, you can enter twice. You get the gist. The rules are all in the threads as well. And then I have two new knit alongs that are going to be starting. The first one is going to be a sweater cowl, which I asked you guys about last week, and there seemed to be like an overall consensus that you guys like the idea of having a sweater knit along, and I decided to keep it generic in terms of like you can knit any sweater you'd like, but if you do knit one of my designs, then you get 2 entries in the FO thread. So I feel like that's fair, and you can knit any sweater. I'm not going to have a requirement that they have to be adult sweaters or anything like that. You can also do child size sweaters. I'm going to be pretty flexible in that regard. WIPs will be allowed if they are adult garments and there's like a reasonable amount left to work on them. Just use your discretion. I'm not going to like heavily monitor this in terms of like being really strict on this sort of rule. Just use your common sense, I guess. And the cowl is going to run until the end of November. I figured that's a good amount of time. From now, April to November, it's most of the year. I think that works out to be like, what, 8 months? So yeah, I'll hopefully have those threads up, the chatter thread and an FO thread before, or by the time this video goes live. So if not, it'll go up like the day after or something. So keep an eye out for that in the group. I will come up with a hashtag as well, and I will pop it up on the screen now, because I didn't think about this before I sat down to record. I should have done. What are we going to call this sweater knit along? KE sweater cowl? Knitting Expat sweater cowl? Yeah, let's just do that. Hashtag KE sweater cowl 19, let's say, just in case we decide to do this again. Okay, KE sweater cowl 19. And once again, all the rules and everything will be in the threads for that. And finally, this is going to be one coming up, and there's a couple of reasons why we're not starting it straight away, which I will talk to you guys about as well. But this is going to be the spin and make along. And thank you to Elise from the My Two Tips podcast for the name suggestion on that one. It's going to be called the spin and make along, because the make along part is not going to be limited to knitting. So we're going to have the spinning segment, which will be for the first 3 months. So it's going to start on the 6th of May and run until the end of July. So it's going to be almost 3 months, and we've done it that way so it also incorporates Tour de Fleece within that time frame. And then from the 1st of August until the end of October, I think, is going to be the make along segment. So that's going to be the 3 months for the make along part. It was end of October, end of November, I can't remember, but like a good decent amount of time for the make along part. So for the spin along part, the idea is you pick out some fibre that you want to spin with the intention of it becoming a specific project. So trying to think about spinning more intentionally. So like I was spinning this fibre and I knew this was going to be a shawl, so I was spinning with that in mind, in terms of how I was using the colours and how I was placing the colours and all of that. So I'm planning on using this spin along to spin up the fibre that I have for my sweater that I had in mind that I wanted to do, which I've shown previously. So that's going to be my main focus for this SMAL. I'm calling it spin make along SMAL. So that's going to be my main focus, but I will probably also be spinning other things in that time frame. And that's the thing, like, you don't have to spin just one thing. You can spin many things. As long as you know what it's going to be, then it can be entered into the spin along segment of this make along. And again, all the rules will be written out in more detail in the threads when we put them up. And I say we because I'm going to be co-hosting this SMAL with Grace of the Babbles Travelling Yarns podcast. Grace and I chatted about this whilst we were at Edinburgh, and she seemed really excited by the idea, so we're going to be co-hosting it. And we've decided on the 6th of May as the start date for the SMAL, mainly because the 6th of May is a bank holiday here in the UK, so I thought that would be a good time to start. Also, because we get back from our trip to Europe on the 5th of May. So we're actually going to be away in Europe for 2 weeks, from like the end of April until the 5th of May. So I didn't really see much point in starting the SMAL before then, because I really wouldn't be able to do much. And also, then my wheel broke when I was spinning this, so I really wouldn't be able to start doing anything until the spare parts arrive so I can fix my wheel. So it's unlikely that I'd be able to start spinning anything or before May anyway. So that didn't seem, we thought we'd start it a little bit later, and this way it gives you guys about a month to prep, to plan, to think about what you want to do, and you know, just to, like, if you need to purchase fibre, that you can do that. If you want to get a spindle because you want to try spinning something, you've got time to basically plan to take part in this SMAL. Sounds weird saying it out loud, but it's a SMAL, essentially, spin and make along. And if you're not a spinner and you don't want to pick up spinning right now because for whatever reason, and I can totally appreciate that, you can still take part in the make along segment of this SMAL. And to do that, all you have to do is you'll need to use Handspun of some variety, whether it's Handspun you've purchased or been gifted. I have some Handspun skeins of mine and a couple that I've been gifted, which I've set aside to use for giveaways. So in advance of the make along portion of this SMAL taking part, I will be hosting a giveaway to give away a few skeins of Handspun to those of you who don't spin, who might want to take part as well. So, you know, there are ways of getting hand spun if you don't spin yourself. There are not as many as like indie dyed yarns, but there are sellers on Etsy who sell hand spun yarn as well, which you can purchase if that is something you are able and wanting to do. So yeah, that's kind of the plans for make-alongs coming this year, or starting now and next month. So let me know what you guys think of that. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. And I will probably have what I'm thinking of doing is like a vlog series for the smell, at least for the spinning portion anyway, where you know, they're going to be shorter vlogs. They're not going to be like my previous spinning vlogs where it's all in one video, but it'll be like the part one will be sitting down, showing you guys the fibre that I'm planning on using, and like talking through my ideas about how I might want to spin it, what I'm going to do, maybe a bit of sampling, and see where we're going to go. And then part two will be, you know, spinning the singles and like that's Derek if you heard him, some of the spinning stuff. And then part three will be like the plying and the finishing, and then part four will be like a review of how everything went. I'm kind of thinking of doing this as a several part series, and some of the parts, like the spinning part and the plying part, might actually be broken down into smaller little vlogs. I don't know. This is just an idea that I have, and I thought it'd be fun to do as part of this smell. And yeah, and then for the making part of it, at least for the sweater spin, this is kind of what I have in mind for the sweater spin. If I spin other things as well, I might do my previous style of spinning vlogs as well, where I do from start to finish if they are smaller projects. We shall see. I haven't given this a whole lot of thought in detail. I've just had some ideas and I'm just sharing those with you, and hopefully you guys find that interesting. Okay, I think that is basically it in terms of the main content for this podcast. Next, the only thing I have left to talk about is just some stuff and review of what's been going on the last couple of weeks. So obviously, so if you're not interested, thank you for joining me. I will hopefully see you again soon. I'm hoping to have another podcast in a couple of weeks before we head off to Europe, and so you can tune back in for that. And then whilst we're in Europe, I am planning on vlogging the trip, but as to whether or not I will be able to edit and upload while we're away, or if that's going to have to wait until we get back, I'm not entirely sure. I'm hoping to be able to take my laptop and maybe edit a few things whilst we are away, just to like be able to keep on top of it. But whether or not I'll be able to upload will depend on how good the internet connection is where we're staying, the places we're staying at. So I can't guarantee anything, but I will definitely be vlogging, and there will be vlogs at some point, either sometime during the trip or after the trip. It will happen. Anyway, so weeks in review. So obviously there's been Edinburgh, and that was a lot of fun. And like I said, if you wanted to hear and see what that was like, you can check out the Edinburgh vlogs. Then the weather for the most part recently has been really lovely and very spring-like, which has been great. And Layla has been obsessed with going to the park and taking the bus. Like, she's obsessed with buses. She's absolutely obsessed with buses. So last week on Friday, I was like, okay, you know what? Let's take the bus and go to a park that's ever so slightly further away from us. It's really not that far. It's like 5 minutes in the car. It's just that slight bit too far away to walk to, if that makes sense. And so it's literally like 5-6 stops on the bus to get to this park. It's really not that far, but I thought it'd be fun for Layla to take the bus. So we took the bus, and she was so mesmerized by it. She was like, we're on the bus, like, we're on the bus. I'm like, yes honey, we're on the bus. You wave at all the buses. She waves at every single bus that we go past. She like waves at it, and then she's like, bye bus, bye bye. And she's really in the phase of saying bye to things as well, which is quite funny. And so I did a little impromptu day in the life type of vlog on Friday when we went to the park. I had my camera with me, and because I wanted to film little snippets of her riding the bus for the first time. I mean, first time that she can remember. She's been on a bus before when she was a baby, but she obviously doesn't recognize that. So that was really, really fun. And then I just kept filming whilst we were at the park, and I was like, well, why don't I just do a nice little day in the life sort of vlog at the park. And it was really lovely. It was such a nice day. It's been a while since I've had a nice day like that with Layla, and you know, it was really nice. And we got home, Perry was working from home that day. We got home and she was like, she ran up to him and was like telling him that we'd been to the park and we'd been on the bus, and like basically just telling him about our day. And it was so sweet. It was so sweet to see it. And you know, really registered that she'd really enjoyed it as well. It was a lovely day, but it was absolutely exhausting. I was so knackered by the end of it, so tired. And then the other thing that's been going on recently is she's been really struggling with nursery in the morning drop-offs. She's absolutely fine, has a great day, always has a good time. She's always happy when we go pick her up in the afternoon, and the teachers always tell us she's had a great time. But ever since she changed classes, once she turned 2, she's been really struggling with drop-offs in the morning. Like, she doesn't want us to leave her. I mean, Perry does the morning drop-offs and I pick her up, but she's always been like really clingy with him, doesn't want him to go, is like crying. And like literally there's been a few times where the teachers are having to like peel her off him, or me if I've been doing it. And it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see her like that, and to have to leave with her being that upset. But they always call us like a couple of minutes later being like, she's fine, she's settled down, she's having breakfast now, she's fine. And so we know she's okay, But recently as well, like, she's really been understanding a lot better when Perry's like, okay, I need to go do work now, and she's like, Daddy, work. I'm like, yeah, Daddy needs to go do work now. And so she's been a lot more okay with that. So I suggested, you know, she'll actually go open the front door and like help him out the house, or if he's going downstairs, like she'll give him a high five and he'll go downstairs and do some work. So I said to Perry, I was like, why don't you just tell her you're going to work, because it's the truth, he is going to work. I'm like, why don't you just tell her you're going to work? Like, she's fine with that when you're at home, so why wouldn't it be the same at nursery? So he tried that once, and she was absolutely like I said, crying, upset, like didn't want to let go of him. And he said, okay, but Layla, I need to go to work now. And it was like a switch just like flipped in her brain, and she was like, right, Daddy has to go to work, get out the door now, go. And like she literally pushed him out the door. It went from like, I don't want you to go, don't leave me, to go get out the door. I was just like, what happened to my child? Like, how did this, like, it's such a weird thing that she just associates with the fact that when Perry says, I need to go do work, she's just like, all right, go, get out the door. And she does the same with me. It doesn't happen with me as often, but if there's ever a time when I'm going out and she's staying here with Perry, I'm like, okay, Mummy needs to go do work now. And she's like, all right, go. Like, go. And she'll go open the door and like push me out the door. And like, she'll literally come up behind you and push you towards the door. So it's really funny. And that's actually worked now, basically ever since. She's been totally fine at drop-offs in the mornings. Like, she'll be a little bit clingy, but then as soon as he says to her, okay, I need to go do work now, she's like, okay, go, get out the door. And like, she'll walk him to the door and open the door and like shove him out. And to the point now where the other kids in the class look forward to this. They look forward to seeing Layla pushing Perry out the door. So Perry said to me today, actually, after when he was dropping her off, that she was okay, a little bit like, again, not wanting him to leave and stuff. And then the other kids start chiming in and say, you need to push him out the door, like out the door, like egging her on to push him out. Anyway, so thankfully we have solved that dilemma. And things are going really well with nursery as well again, which is good. And then what else? So this weekend, Layla's actually going to go stay with my parents for a couple of days, which is going to be really nice for her. She's going to get spoiled rotten, obviously, of course she will. And it'll be good for them because, again, recently she's been a little bit clingy with Perry or me if we're around when we're at my parents'. So being there on her own means that, you know, my parents will get some more quality one-on-one time with her, as will my brother, and she'll get a little bit more independent. So it'll be fine. And she's already pretty independent. But anyway, what else? Then I'm going to be going to the Socks on the Beach meetup this weekend on Sunday at near Tribe Yarns, or at Tribe Yarns in Richmond. I haven't ever been able to make one of their meetups. They usually meet up around Brighton, which is also really close to me. I've never been able to make it because their meetups are generally on weekends, and usually we have plans on the weekends, or we had prior things in place going on that I couldn't cancel or couldn't change, and I was just found out too late about the get-togethers with the Socks on the Beach. So I've been like, I really want to go, or like I've been out of town or something's been going on, I've not been able to make it. So I was really excited when this came up, and I was like, okay, great, we have no plans for that day, I can go. And this is before we even knew Layla was going to go stay with my parents, so that wasn't really a consideration in this. If she was here, then Perry would have just had her for the week, for that day. But I'm really looking forward to going. So that should be really fun. I'm looking forward to catching up with some people. Some of the people who go to the Socks on the Beach get-togethers I know already, and others I've only interacted with online. But the Socks on the Beach is essentially what would be considered my local knitting group, I guess. So they don't get together very frequently. It's like maybe once a month at most. They have events and stuff where they get together, but like I said, they're typically on weekends, so I'm not always able to make weekend stuff. But you know, on that note, I have also been thinking about maybe starting a midweek meetup, knitting meetup. Again, maybe once every other week or once a month sort of thing, just keeping it fairly casual. I'm not entirely sure yet. I haven't reached out to anybody to see about organising this, but we'll see how it goes. It would be nice to kind of have a slightly more regular in-person knit group type situation. So we'll see. Hopefully that'll be able to happen at some point. That'd be nice. And that's it really. I think I've covered everything else that I wanted to talk about. What else? That's it. Like I said, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot more happening video wise until I podcast next, just because I have a few things I want to finish up, and then we're going away to Europe, so there's going to be plenty of vlogs after we get back from Europe, and then obviously more podcasts and content and spinning content and all sorts of fun things. Actually, the only thing that might be filmed before I go away might be the like part 1 of the spin along video, kind of like the prep stages, which I might publish just before we go away or whilst we're away, kind of in the run up to the smell starting, so you can keep an eye out for that. And yeah, I'm starting to feel my voice go a little bit croaky, so I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long. I have a feeling I still nattered on for a good hour or so, even though I didn't have as much to talk about as usual. Apparently I just can't help myself. So thanks again for joining me. I will check in with you guys again soon, and yeah, bye.